Spoilers ahead. Watch out, and take care. The movie tells the story of a lawyer who is forced to defend the murderer of a loved one. It begins with a well-known businessman, Hans Meyer, murdered in his hotel room. The murderer, Collini, comes down to the blood-stained lobby, and tells the receptionist that Meyer is dead in his presidential suite. The suspect is arrested the same day. As his defense counsel, he is assigned a public defender named Casper. His supervisors tell him that the victim was killed with 3 shots to the head. The lawyer is also informed that there are many clues against Collini: fingerprints on the murder weapon, bloodstains, fragments on the clothes. Casper was licensed only 3 months ago. The man is so inexperienced that he wears a cape during the hearing, causing laughter from those present. He goes to talk to his client Collini, but the defendant remains stubbornly silent, and does not answer the defense attorney's questions. Later, the judge notes to Casper that it is not necessary to wear a cape if there are no listeners during the hearing. During a conversation with friends, Casper learns the name of the murder victim, and is horrified. It turns out that Meyer was the man who replaced Casper's father. The protagonist has always been a welcome guest in the businessman's home. When the boy grew up, Meyer even paid for his college, and gave him one of his collector cars. Later that evening, while he is studying the case, Meyer's granddaughter, Joanna, pays him a visit. Casper comforts her and offers his condolences. The two had a relationship when they were young, but after the death of her brother and best friend in an accident, they grew apart. The grief-stricken woman doesn't understand why someone would kill her grandfather. He admits that he has been appointed a lawyer for the case. She thinks he should not defend the murderer. The prosecutor is represented by Professor Mattinger, a law professor at the university. Mattinger declares that the opponents should get to know each other, and congratulates him on his interesting debut. Casper says he plans to file a motion to refuse to represent Collini, because Meyer was like a father. Mattinger insists that the young lawyer must not abandon the first case, otherwise, the next one may awaken childhood memories in him. Casper listens to the advice, and decides to finish what he started. One evening, he visits the morgue to see Meyer's dead body, and this triggers memories in him. A few days later, he visits Collini in prison, to ask him some questions. Casper warns that the man risks life in prison if he does not start talking. It is necessary to think of a strategy. It might be possible to prove that the crime was committed under the influence of emotion, and soften the verdict, but the defendant is silent. There is no direct link between the murderer and the victim, no testimony from the defendant. The case is doomed to fail. Casper visits Joanna, and she reminds him how much her grandfather did for him. She says he is a lawyer. Had he been a doctor, he would have been obliged to save the murderer's life. Casper tries to get an answer from the woman about whether the murder could be related to Meyer's work. Perhaps he was running scams and being blackmailed, but an indignant Joanna leaves without saying anything. At the funeral, Joanna gives a touching speech. Meyer was an open man, who surrounded everyone with love and generosity. Later, Casper notices his father among the guests, and asks him what he is doing here. The man says he has come to thank the man who took care of his son, and would like to reconnect with Casper, but he replies that it is too late to play house. Soon, the day of the first hearing finally arrives. Forensics reports that the victim was clearly taken by surprise, and did not resist. From the letter found in the room, police learn that Collini introduced himself to Meyer as a businessman, which is why the victim let the killer in. The hotel receptionist says that the accused's face was aloof when he descended into the cold. During another meeting with the accused, Casper warns Collini that Mattinger is a master of his craft, and that if he continues to keep quiet, he will die in prison. Casper tells him that he is trying to help, even though he killed the man dearest to him, and when he was little only his mother had time for him. His father was gone, and his unfortunate mother was forced to work all the time. When he is about to leave, Collini says that if the lawyer's father is still alive, they should see each other more often. Fathers should not be forgotten because they are not immortal. Then he falls silent again. Shortly before the next hearing, Mattinger invites Casper onto his boat, and proposes a deal. If Casper convinces Collini to plead guilty, he will negotiate a reduced sentence of 7 years for manslaughter. With good behavior, the accused will be out in 3-4 years. Casper asks him for more time to push Collini to confess. However, Collini sobs that he does not care about the sentence reduction, and continues to remain silent. One day, Joanna visits Casper, and the feelings of yesteryears are rekindled. At another hearing, a ballistics expert testifies that Meyer was killed with a Walter P38, an atypical gun for criminals, and a rather rare weapon. The chances of finding this model on the black market are extremely slim. Casper realizes that it was probably no coincidence that Collini chose this particular gun, but it is not yet known why, and remembers playing as a child in the library, with Meyer's grandson. The little boy showed him his grandfather's gun hidden behind the shelves, which was very similar to the Walter itself. Then the boys received a reprimand from Meyer, and a ban from the library. The lawyer, after staying overnight at Joanna's, goes there and finds the gun. He photographs it and compares it. It is really a Walter P38. During another hearing, Casper asks for a postponement, but despite the prosecution's protests, he gets 4 days. He reveals to the judge that he has found an important piece of information, and understanding that in such a short period of time it is impossible to handle a large amount of information alone, asks his father for help. The man is happy to have the opportunity to communicate with his son. While he works in the archives, Casper travels to the defendant's hometown of Montecatini. After studying the archives and talking to locals, the lawyer finds enough information to appear in court. He goes to Joanna's to argue with her, but when he arrives, Joanna is talking to Mattinger, and tells him not to talk about Meyer's past for the good of the company, and the lawyer leaves. One evening, Mattinger visits Casper, and advises him to keep the rediscovered tricks to himself. The truth would benefit no one, especially Joanna. Mattinger offers one last deal and a position in a large company, but Casper refuses. When he meets Joanna, the woman admits that she is aware of Meyer's past, but that it is a distant one. He says that as a lawyer, he will defend his client to the end. The woman gets angry, and reminds him that he only became a lawyer because of Meyer, and it would be mean to do this to him and family. At the hearing, Casper calls a historian from the Federal Archives as a witness. She confirms that in 1943, Meyer was an SS officer, and was serving in Italy. The next witness is Claudio Lucchesi of Montecatini, who tells the tragic story of the Collini family. After the war, Claudio's father was executed for helping the Germans, even though he was only a translator. Claudio's father worked for Meyer. In 1944, a bomb exploded in a cafe in Trent. 2 German soldiers were killed, clearly by partisan action. The Germans could not let it go, they had to break the resistance. Meyer gave orders to kill 10 Italian partisans for every German killed. The Germans identified a random town on the map, Montecatini, and went there. They broke into houses and dragged civilians, including a child, Fabrizio Collini, into the street, but Meyer ordered them not to touch the children. Turning to Collini, Casper asks if he wants to testify. The man nods. He recounts that Meyer asked where his father was, and the boy, unaware, pointed to the man in the crowd. Collini's father was immediately grabbed, and placed with the other 12 condemned men. Meyer forced Collini to look, and then the gunfire started. The officer then handed his Walter to one of his subordinates, and ordered him to finish off Collini's father. There is silence in the courtroom, and after a half-hour break, Mattinger takes the floor. He states that such methods were the norm at the time, and that this is not an isolated case. Under certain conditions, these things were done in accordance with international law, according to which an act of reprisal should not target women and children. Suddenly, Mattinger reveals that in 1968, Collini and his sister accused Meyer of war crimes. However, Meyer was acquitted of the charge, and as a result, Collini killed an innocent man. After the trial, Collini told his lawyer that his sister had sworn to him not to do anything, and not to talk to anyone about it until the end of her days. She lived with this pain for more than 30 years, and died 2 months ago. Casper asks for the defendant's forgiveness. A good lawyer would have gotten him 4 years in prison, but he couldn't. Collini says he is not interested in sentence reduction now, only in justice. Sobbing, he asks why Meyer was not punished then. Casper finds that 1968 case, and tries to figure it all out, with his father helping him. At the next hearing, the lawyer invites Mattinger, an expert on legal history. Answering the lawyer's questions, Mattinger admits that the case against Meyer was closed not because the killing of the hostages was legal, but because of a law passed 4 months before the indictment. That law qualified the actions of some of the accomplices in the shooting as manslaughter, not murder, and the statute of limitations for that offense had already expired by the time of the lawsuit. Casper knows that Mattinger himself promoted this law, when he worked at the Department of Justice. He tells Casper that he is just a young man, who does not understand how things work then. Casper is protected here by the fact that he was born later and does not understand how the country worked back then. Casper says that the law was a disgrace, and if Mattinger did not have the courage to stand up and speak out then, let him at least do so now. No one condones Collini's actions, but it is not right that the case against Meyer was not even brought. There is a pause, after which Mattinger admits that now, in accordance with international law, Meyer should have been charged with and convicted of war crimes. The court says the verdict will be delivered tomorrow. Casper approaches Collini and tells him that his mission is over. The man's face relaxes for a moment, and he says that the dead do not want revenge, and thanks his lawyer. The next day, instead of issuing a verdict, the judge says Collini ended himself in prison. The death was confirmed by the medical examiner at 2 a.m. The trial is closed. A few days later, Casper receives an envelope from the former defendant. It contains a photo of him as a child with his father. The lawyer flies to Italy for Collini's funeral, and walking around the town where Collini grew up, hopes that he will be reunited with his family in a better place. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Turn on the notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out.